What's up everyone? Ian, that's me. This is the straddle press tutorial. Everyone wants the straddle press, everyone in the world really. And so we're going to figure out how to do that today. The straddle press is a counterbalance. You might not think of it like that at first, but you need to be able to lift your legs somehow, and that's really by counterbalancing your legs with your torso. Right? So, the beginning of the press, the lift-off, completely depends on getting enough of your torso past your hands so that they counterbalance your leg.
Everyone's going to be in a very different place depending on wrist flexibility, shoulder flexibility, hamstring, low back flexibility, and so on. So technically, everyone will need a slightly different technique to get themselves to lift. But regardless, you still need to get enough of your torso to counterbalance your legs. So let's look at these different variations. If you don't have much flexibility in your wrists, right, then your wrists are going to lift up as you lean forward. So to pull them down, you really need to lean a lot of shoulder forward, right? And your counterbalance would look like that. That's going to be really hard, right? Same thing will happen if you don't have good hamstring flexibility, right? So let's say I can't straighten my legs to get my hips high. Then the only way I can really stack my weight over my hands is, again, to lean really far forward and then lift up. And that's going to really take more of this planche strength. But that being said, don't be afraid of using planche strength if that's all that you got. Now, if you have really closed shoulders, right? Closed shoulders really means that you don't have an easy time getting your hands back here. Most of the time they stay here. Then again, planche strength. Closed shoulders versus open shoulders. So you see, with the open shoulders, I could put my hands right next to my head, and then with my hamstring flexibility and abdominal compression, I can get my hips directly over my hands and my shoulder.
If you do have pretty good hamstring flexibility, which I kind of do, kind of don't, then your press in a sense should be easier because it'll be easier to stack your hips over your hands, right? It would look a little more like this. See, my hips are up, and it's actually not too much of a shoulder lean to get my feet up. Right, so let's break down the actual move itself now. You might notice that I start with legs together as opposed to legs straddle. A lot of people start with legs slightly out to the side, right, slightly apart, and then they start their press. The problem with this is, again, it'll be hard to get my hips over without planching, right? Even if I have a good fold, how am I supposed to get my arms straight and get my hips over? It seems impossible. And remember, the straddle press should have completely straight arms. You'll be the tallest and have the easiest stack if you can really keep your legs together. So, start with legs together, put your hands at a place that you feel comfortable in terms of flexibility, and then just walk a little bit forward, and do your best to keep maximal extension, right? Don't let yourself come here. Bring your head in between your hands, and don't let this happen or this happen, right? Both of these are going to lose the main engagement that you need. So pull elbows in towards each other. Don't turn them forward. Don't turn them back. Kind of just have them facing each other. Bring your head in line with your hands. And now get to your tiptoes and hold this position. This is the most important position you really want to engage. So from this completely folded position, right? And so for those of you with less hamstring flexibility, bend your knees a little bit, but still try to stack your body, right? And those with slight wrist flexibility issues, feel free to slightly turn your fingers out, okay? So we're really stacking here, and the real goal should not be to try to press right away, it should be to try to hover. So I think the most important position in the straddle press is this, is the hover, right? You want to be able to hover here and know that you can do whatever you need to with your legs. If you don't have that hover down, everything will be a lot more difficult. Well, so now the question might be, how do we get the hover down? Okay, well, first of all,
in this position we're in, you want to start, let's say, not at your most difficult position. You want to start maybe 20% back towards your feet and 5% less folded. And you can practice tilting forward and folding at the same time. So here I am at the 60, whatever, 80%, whatever percent I said. Now I tilt forward and I get to my tiptoes. That really lets me know what that position is. And so not only should we hold this position, but we should shrug our shoulders. We should do push-ups in that position. And we should do knee raises to even more bring the weight forward. And lastly, we can get a hamstring and wrist stretch and folding practice by starting here folded over the feet, then push, push, push over the hands. Over the feet, over the hands. Folded, pushed out,
Really engaging up. And something you might notice is that your arms and shoulders can't really stay as extended and straight as mine are. And so part of that will come from not engaging all the way from the ribs. You want this push to come from almost the middle back. It's not just about extending shoulders, it's about extending all the way through the ribs.
So the difference kind of looks like this. This is me thinking I'm pushing, but not using my ribs. That's using my ribs. And that lifts me up.
Lift isn't only coming from the push of the arms, it's coming from the abdomen, folding you in half and pulling your midsection up, holding it up.
Right? So the hover is actually also a function of your abdomen coming up. So you should be comfortable breathing in the folded position with the smallest abdomen possible, with pressure upwards as if it's going to lift your hips up.
One extra exercise you can do to help practice the folding and get the stretch but still make it dynamic in and out
is by starting almost in a complete squat, well, not a really well-formed squat, and then tilting forward and extending at the same time, right? So squat, push, and lean, right? One extra thing I'm not telling you, as part of the shoulder engagement, don't let your shoulders stay out, bring them in towards your ears. Not necessarily up and in, but first in, then up. Got that?
Alright, so let's say you're at the verge, right? You'll see
this happening a lot. Let's say you can almost get the press, should be like this. The foot shake, and then back down, right? So, what to do here? So one exercise I think is super important is just getting the feeling for how your weight tilts over your hands and how your legs come out. So, again, how I've seen many people do their presses, especially when they start straddle, they kind of do this back lifting thing, right? So I'm here, legs out, and they, right?
So instead of giving yourself this front-back momentum by lifting your legs backwards and then forwards, instead you should really strive to bring your legs directly to the side. So if we see from this profile view, I shouldn't have much front-back motion, but I'm not that good, so maybe there'll be some. Okay, so how do we achieve that? Well, first of all, you want to make sure that you have some hip mobility outwards. So slightly turn out your leg so that your foot can point in line with your leg. And then you got to bring it sideways. And from here, you can even practice this. That doesn't feel too good. It's tough. But another thing you can do is practice the lean with a little hop. But the hop should be legs directly apart. Looks like this. Yeah. Nope, this way. I'll give you both views. So, you lean, hop. Lean, hop. Lean, hop. And the good thing about this is that you can time
the push by the feeling of when the weight gets in your hands. You can then time the hop by the feeling of having your weight going over your hands, and you should plan to bring the feet back so that you still can come back in a very dynamic fashion, right?
Don't do just jump as high as you can and then here. You want to choose and find how much you can actually go. Then you bring that jump higher and higher and the straddle wider and wider. Here's from the other view. So we would progress it like this. Jump, 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 and then
you'll notice you hit this one point where your hips have to turn over, right? So unless you're completely compressed and completely perfect split, at some point your hips will actually have to turn over. But to make that turnover as little as possible, compress, right? Thighs to chest, chest to thighs, as hard as possible. And you do that from both ends by activating legs in the direction of the chest and by pulling the back and chest towards the thighs. Okay, so that means not going out here and then letting the legs come out. Instead, going here, pulling back towards legs, thighs, towards the arms, and then getting up. Right?
Alright, well, now let's say you can already do almost all of that. You can lift, you can hover a little bit, you can bring your legs up, but then you always lose your balance at the top, right? Well, part of that will be from not resetting your shoulders as you go up and not pushing through your fingers, right? So at the very bottom of it, right here,
all my weight is kind of still towards my legs, right? And so it's easy
for my balance. And it actually goes back towards the feet. But as I'm going up, there's still some forward lean that I need to undo.
So let's exaggerate it with some closed shoulder planching straddle press. So here I am coming up. Bring the shoulders back. Make that active. So I'm here. So I gotta come back here. And as I do that, I also give a little press through the fingers, and that helps me from going over.
If you can already hold a handstand, it's also nice practice to lower in a very controlled fashion with negative, but again, you should go along that same path, going back to feet together in front of your hands, right? So, here. Say, we're up in a handstand, let's say here.
Yeah, and so compressing, and I come back to here.
Come back, feet together.
Alright, so to summarize, really, you'll have the best advantage in your straddle planche if you can fold harder, bringing your leg close to your chest. If you can have the hamstring flexibility to do that, if you extend all the way from the ribs, not just the shoulders when you extend, if you pull the elbows in and shoulders in, if you remember to push through your fingers on the way up, and if you start feet together so that you're tallest and your legs can go out. And again, find the hardest positions, the most limiting factor in your own progress, and create an entire regimen around that. So if my flexibility is my issue, or my compression is my issue, you should be folding a lot, you should be doing leg raises a lot, you can do them hanging from a bar, right, and doing compression stuff. If your wrists are your limiting factor, you should actually just train your wrists, and you should emphasize pulling your hand back down to the ground to have extra extension all the way through the ribs. If your shoulder extension is your limitation, put your weight into your hands and do shrugs, right? Do one leg in to increase the weight. If it's in the triceps, do full elbows in or elbows out, mostly elbows out for triceps. Dive bomber push-ups, right? And yeah, in general, just find the hardest position and create regimen around it, spend the most time in it, and eventually you'll be good. And last thing, remember, strive to hit that hover position before anything else. It will make your life easier. This position.